back to Cofield and Company on ESPN Las Vegas.
Every Tuesday at this time, we catch up on UNLV football with the former Rebel quarterback, Caleb Herring. He's now the radio analyst for Learfield. It's presented each week by Born and Raised Las Vegas and, of course, in Henderson. Caleb, my friend, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Steve?
We're good. Disappointing game to break down. We'll start with what you thought of how the Rebels were performing through like a quarter and a half when, they were down, but the yardage count was about 95-73. They were in the game, and, outside of a unfortunate pick six off a couple of deflections, they were playing pretty well to that point.
Yeah, I think, the pick six obviously got things started off on a terrible note, and offensively, at least, they never quite recovered from that start. And, anytime you start a game off with anything like that, it's discouraging, to say the least. You come out with a game plan, you're excited about it, and you throw that pick, it's hard to get yourself back going. And you can see offensively they didn't. Defensively, through that first quarter and a half, though, they were solid. They held their own. It looked like Arkansas State was doing some feeling out, and the defense was fired up for those first couple of series. And you could see as they watched their offense struggle to get anything going, that energy slowly faded. And I think the crucial moment was when they got a big-time stop down near their own end zone, and gave their offense the ball back, albeit near the 10-yard line or in some pretty bad field position. They made a defensive stop, and then they watched their offense go 3 and out after that. And that was kind of the straw that broke the defense's back, so to speak. And after that, it seemed like the floodgates kind of opened, and the energy was just sapped from the team in total. So, yeah, like you said, a good quarter and a half of back-and-forth football, but once the floodgates opened, they weren't able to put the lid back on.
Well, you talk about the okay quarter and a half to start things off. Was there any positives that you could take from the game in general? Because I know we're going to get into a lot of negatives. Anything overall that you saw throughout the game that was consistent?
What I did like was Jericho Flowers' aggression in the secondary defensively. That would be the first thing that I like. He had a couple of big pass breakups. One being on that third down stop in the red zone where he deflected a pass and on their best receiver, and it was a tough defensive play. But I like seeing that out of DBs, making catches challenging. We didn't see it that much throughout the game, but that was a positive sign that he was playing aggressive in the secondary through much of the game. Charles Williams, of course, is a huge positive throughout the game, where his intensity and his energy is something I think is contagious, and the more he goes, it is one of those things that kind of gets the offense's mojo going. You see when he rips off a big run, not just the huge one that led to a touchdown, but those 5 and 6 yard runs that are just full of energy and excitement. It gets the guys going, whether it's the sideline getting excited or the offensive line, seeing that one of the running backs is running hard and making them right, making holes when they can't quite get the blocks that they need to. He's definitely a bright spot for the team. I did see some good things from Rashad Jackson as well. I mean, at linebacker, he's pulling his weight and doing his job. His responsibility, his assignment technique are spot on for that linebacker position. I think this is one of those games where the run game got going for Arkansas State, so you got to see him in action making a little bit more tackles. He led the team in tackles. So his name was called a lot, as well as Evan Austria as well. So there's some spot individual highlights, but overall, after that first quarter and a half, there wasn't too much good to say about the team performance that was out there.
So I feel like I could just say the name as a question, but I guess I'll just phrase it. What did you see from Armani Rogers on Saturday night?
I didn't see him comfortable at all, and it was from the very beginning of the game, of that first drive, that first interception. Of course, everybody looks at the fact that the pass was intercepted as that was obviously a mistake, but I look at him in the first drive of a series, or first drive of a game rather, and he threw that interception off his back leg with not much pressure in his face to speak of, and so that to me indicates that he wasn't comfortable for whatever reason. He just didn't feel comfortable in the pocket on that first series, and that carried out through the rest of the night, whether it was on the RPOs, making the decision to go with the throw when it really wasn't there, and then from there looking discombobulated and trying to find get his wits about him in the pocket as the play is going on around him, sitting in the pocket too long, not finding his check down, things like that. He was off the mark all night, and as a quarterback, sometimes you get in that zone. Sometimes you get in a zone where it's good, you're on fire, everything makes sense. And then sometimes you get in a place, it's like a rut where nothing makes sense. and the game's moving 100 miles an hour past you. It looked like for much of the night, Armani was in the latter of those two phases where the game plan he may have known, he may have been comfortable with it coming into the game, but for whatever reason, on the field, he looked distracted and uncomfortable in the pocket as a passer.
I mean, it seems like, you said it could happen. You can either get in a zone in a good way, or you can just never find your comfort level in a bad way. But it seems like it happens, frequently at times with Armani. Like, you see him have great games, right, and then you just see these games where you're like, what is going on out there? I still think Armani Rogers gives that team the best chance to win, but how can it happen so consistently that he doesn't feel comfortable?
Well, I think it has to do with the opponent a little bit. Maybe there's an element of what the opponent's doing defensively, some of the things that maybe he's not as comfortable with, the looks that he's getting or the coverages that he's seeing maybe on an opponent-to-opponent basis could have something to do with it. Also, just the way the offensive scheme dictates what calls he's getting or what calls he isn't getting. For instance, like if he seems to be most comfortable after he runs the ball or he has success on the ground, which is not what you want to say about your quarterback, but things open up for him. Getting that first hit or breaking that first sweat kind of settles you down a little bit. And I think he didn't get that in this game, partly because the first two plays from scrimmage were pretty much bottled up by Arkansas State, so that drive didn't ever get going. And then his pass attempt obviously was intercepted. So that kind of thing definitely puts you in a funk. And because he's not as efficient in the passing game, you can't really just say go out and get an easy completion and it'll get you back in rhythm, because sometimes for him, it's not that easy to get completion. And then you have series where you go 3 and out with all 3 pass attempts later on in the game, and that definitely, as a quarterback, will crush your confidence. It's a confidence thing, I think, in my opinion. And once you lose the confidence as a quarterback, you're playing with one leg, and it's really tough to bounce back and be productive if your confidence is shot. And I think, like I said, it has to do a lot with the offensive scheme coming into the game, what they're highlighting, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to attack in the defense. Sometimes he may not be comfortable with that, and it shows throughout the game. And I think that's why you see the inconsistency there.
Caleb Herring, former UNLV quarterback. He's the analyst on radio. Rebels getting ready for a Saturday game against a Big Ten foe. How good a Big Ten foe? We'll find out. Northwestern. So let's continue on quarterback confidence. What'd you make of what Tony Sanchez said after the game? That he didn't proclaim there's a quarterback controversy. It's a 50-50 battle, but he said, hey, we got to look at it, and we got to get number 7 ready. Kenyon Oblad went in there and threw some nice passes. So from a quarterback standpoint, what do you think Armani Rogers is thinking right now?
Well, I mean, like you said, he didn't necessarily Tony didn't come out necessarily and flat out say there's a controversy or we're looking to put Kenyon in. But kind of reading between the lines, as I know a quarterback in that situation would, because these days everybody hears everything. You can say what you want, but the players are going to hear this stuff. So reading between the lines is what you kind of do. You take it one of two ways. You take it as a challenge and you step up to that and you come out and have your best week of practice that you've ever had, or it bothers you to the point where you're distracted by it and you come out and give less than your best effort because of it. And in a sense, prove everybody or any doubt that was insinuated by Coach's comments, you prove that doubt right. That's the worry, and I've made my opinions about quarterback controversies, quote unquote, known that I'm not a fan of quarterback controversy during the middle of a season because you risk losing both quarterbacks. So, for instance, Armani's confidence gets shot. He hears that statement by his coach. He comes out, has a terrible week at practice. He's not confident in himself. They go up to Northwestern. He has a rough game. Now he's lost. His confidence, you have to rebuild him in order for him to be the best option for winning, which I think he is right now. So his confidence is he's not that guy anymore. Then you have a redshirt freshman who comes in and may not be completely ready, albeit an arm talent. He's a great passer. He showed you some glimpses in mop-up duty and against the 2 defense, and he 3 for 3 with a touchdown. It looks good. He's a local kid. He has a family. Everybody likes him. So it looks good on paper to put him in, but he goes in and he doesn't perform as you expected. So now you have a situation where both quarterbacks now have their confidence shot, and you really don't have a direction as to what you want to do as a team. So I'm not a big fan of the controversy, and I think Coach Sanchez has since come out this week and basically put his support back in Armani and kind of built him up through statements that he's made to the press that Armani's still the guy. Albeit he has to be better, he's still the guy right now. So that is a comforting sign to me as a fan of Rebel football. And as with my personal opinions about quarterback controversy. I don't think they're good for any team when you have a controversy in the middle of a season about who your starting quarterback is going to be.
So you mentioned the comments, and we talk about the comments of, maybe the competition being open and then kind of shutting that down a little bit. But after the game, I thought it was also very interesting that Tony Sanchez said, I think in some situations we give Armani way too many things to think about on a play-by-play basis. There's too many options there, and we have to do a better job of limiting some of that. And we immediately, of course, as a group media, went to Armani and said, hey, this is what Coach said. What do you think about it? And he basically just said, no, I disagree. Like, he didn't even have a full answer. He just said, no, absolutely not. I mean, is one of them not being truthful or honest about the situation? Do they both kind of see it that way? Or as a former player, you kind of have been there and answered questions before. Do you just not want to talk about it after the game? You could just shut it down.
Well, I think it could be a little both. I think as a player who just played probably the worst game of his career, I think he just doesn't want to talk about it. He just shut it down. There's definitely some of that there. But I think it is also tough as an athlete in the heat of the moment, and in that situation, there's a lot of pride that goes into it, where maybe you don't even realize that there's truth to the statement. I mean, he could understand the offense completely, have a great grasp over it, know what the checks are, understand what an RPO, what you're trying to get out of an RPO. All of those could be true. He could completely understand what's going on, but having to make those decisions in the heat of a game or at game tempo is a different thing. And maybe you're not being 100% honest with yourself in that, yes, you understand the system, you understand the offense, but it is taking away from your ability to just flat out play football because you're having to make all these decisions. And that is kind of the crucial point of being a quarterback is not only are you a great athlete, you have quarterbacks, and I'll say this as a former quarterback, quarterbacks are the best athletes on the football field at any given time. But they also have to be able to make decisions for everyone else as well as for themselves at a split second notice. So it's very tough to be overwhelmed with decisions, and there could be truth to that. Coach Sanchez could be spot on. I would agree to an extent that making the offense more simplistic and even adding an element of tempo to the game to where you're rapidly getting up to the line of scrimmage and running a simplified version of the offense, I think would help Armani and make his decision making less of a burden. So yes, he understands it, but he's also able to just play free and let loose and be the talented athlete that we all know he can be.
And I heard you multiple times during the game lobbing criticism towards Armani on the RPOs.
Yeah, the RPOs are a tough thing to do. And there's a reason that the NFL has this whole catalog of RPOs. Every team now is doing it. It's an effective play when done correctly. I think the risk you take with an RPO is having a quarterback that's trying to force a play instead of just taking what the defense gives them. And I think that is what I saw from Armani a few times in the past 2 weeks, even against Southern Utah as well as against Arkansas State, where maybe he's anticipating what the defense might do and anticipating that this pass could be open and I can fit this in here if I get it off quick enough. But that's not what the RPOs are supposed to do. The RPOs are supposed to take advantage of the look that you get. What you see is what you get with an RPO. And being able to trust that and understand that is one of the hard parts about being a quarterback, because every quarterback thinks they can make every throw. It's open. Every pass is open to a quarterback, and that's good. But there are times where on a 1st and 10, to get the drive going, you call an RPO thinking that you may get an easy look at a slant or a hitch route on the outside, but you really are okay just handing the ball off sometimes. If it's dicey, just run the simple handoff, and you'll live with Charles Williams and the offensive line getting a 1-2 yard gain on 1st down. That's fine. What you don't want to happen is on an RPO, the quarterback makes a decision to throw it, and then all of a sudden he raises up and passing lane's not there, and then he's stuck in the backfield dancing around or trying to scramble just to get back to the line of scrimmage. So that I think happened quite a few times over the first 2 games of the season. And I think that's something that if they correct, the RPO can be great for them, but it has to be run correctly on the field on Saturdays.
That's the voice of Caleb Herring, analyst on radio for the Rebels, former UNLV quarterback. You can hear more of him tomorrow. Tony Sanchez radio show goes down at 6 o'clock on the west side. Going to rotate between the two, there's multiple Parkway locations, but the location at the District, and this week it's at the 215 and Flamingo location. So come out, watch the show. You can ask questions. Last thing, because we'll, on the Coaches Show, get into Northwestern and the scout there more heavily. The Wildcats and Pat Fitzgerald are not without issues at quarterback as well. They're he was going to start at least the beginning of the year. We'll see if he gave away the position at some point to Hunter Johnson. But TJ Green is down for the count. Hunter Johnson had a terrible first game. I think his QBR was 4.2. That ain't good, but he is very highly touted. We're talking about a guy who was a top 10 quarterback in his class, transferred from Clemson, chose Northwestern over schools like Ohio State and Purdue. So we're wondering what we're going to see from this kid as he got off to a horrific start in game one against Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, albeit against Stanford, who's a Pac-12 team, a powerhouse usually. I mean, not the Stanford of old this year, but throwing 2 interceptions against them as a backup coming in, with a game that was kind of close. I mean, that game wasn't a blowout by any means. It was a low-scoring affair, but no, that's the only sample that we have of Hunter Johnson. So we don't really know how confident this team is in him. He wasn't the starter at game one, so that obviously says something about who they feel is the better guy. But they're coming off of a bye week, so he's had plenty of time to acclimate to being a number one guy. He's had plenty of reps with the ones these last 2 weeks. So you could get a mixed bag. I think they might try to get his confidence back, honestly, looking at their opponent, and this is just being completely honest here. Northwestern may look at this as an opportunity to get him some true game experience and really try to let the training wheels off, so to speak, and let him regain his confidence for the rest of their season, because it looks like Green's going to miss the season with that foot injury because he had surgery, I believe. So Green's going to be out for the season. So they're going to try to get their confidence in this guy this week. Coming off of a bye week, the game plan might be wide open for him. So you don't know. It could be one of those games where he tries to air it out and let things go, but on the other hand, it could be one of those conservative type performances as well. So we'll see. You don't really know what to prepare for. Like you said, a terrible performance against Stanford. So who knows where this guy's confidence is at? He's highly touted. He's got the accolades. He's got the credentials, but we've yet to really see him put together a full 4 quarters. So we'll see how things go for quarterbacking for Northwestern this week.